every Thursday will now be Tax Thursday to create awareness among Nigerians on the need to voluntarily pay their taxes. The government is banking on getting at least 4 million new taxpayers from the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. In an earlier concession, tax defaulters were given till March of next year to voluntarily declare their assets and income, as well as pay necessary taxes or face criminal prosecution. Acting President Yemi Osinbajo handed down the ultimatum at the launch of the Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme in Abuja. For more on this, we have with us in the studio a tax practitioner, Babatunde Gafar. It's good to have you join us here on the News Hour.
Thank you very much.
This initiative, how impactful do you expect it to be, considering that some Nigerians who are already paying taxes are getting discouraged with the economic situation in the country?
Well, tax matters is a bit touchy, particularly people don't voluntarily submit themselves for tax assessment. But it is mandatory that they should, because that is where the government derives its pay source for developmental projects. And therefore, any step taken to really get people to pay their taxes will be welcomed. So I am in line with the declaration of the Vice President, or the Acting President, on that matter.
All right, the government says voluntary taxpayers who have defaulted will be given amnesty. Who are the voluntary taxpayers?
Voluntary taxpayers are those particularly in the private sector. Those, because the people who are already in the tax net are always under the payee, those who are under employment. A lot of people are not on unemployment, they are on their own, and there is no way to really get them to pay tax. So what the government is trying to do now is to bring, and that's the only way we can get more tax, is to get more people into the tax dragnet. That is, instead of increasing a tax rate, get more people into tax dragnet, and a lot of people, particularly in the private sector, and that's, they don't pay tax or evade tax, particularly so many organizations, NGOs, churches, almost all of them, because they are supposed to pay tax, and it's mandatory for them, and it is part of the statute of the Company Income Tax Act and the Personal Income Tax Act that they should be able to pay taxes, but they have been evading to pay tax. In fact, some of them will even argue that they have no income. But a lot of things have to be done. I think they have to be encouraged. But more importantly, we need to expand the tax dragnet to bring more people into paying their tax.
Okay, as an expert, examine for us the pros and the cons of the pay-as-you-earn system, which 96% of the 14 million Nigerian taxpayers are ascribing to, and the personal income tax.
Personal income tax is, you see, for those who are in employment, it is easy to assess their pay, and the tax is taken from source. But for private persons who the income you cannot even determine unless it is declared, it's pretty difficult to get them to.
So those are the 4%?
Yes, those are the percentage. And what we can do is this education, public awareness, cohesion. I don't think penalty will be the main weapon we will use in this case. I think we need persuasions, tax education, to be able to get more people into that dragnet. And there are more people outside the tax dragnet than those inside it.
All right, from statistics, only 20% of Nigerians actually pay tax.
Even less than that.
Well, statistics say 20%. Now, tell us how this Tax Thursday is going to actually achieve its objective of raising awareness. In what ways are they going to set out to doing that? Well,
the campaign is on now.
Yeah.
The acting president has spoken, and for those people, particularly in the private sector, who have been evading tax, because it's become criminal, because tax evasion is a criminal act. You can avoid tax. tax avoidance is acceptable. Tax evasion is a crime. And a lot of them, but in this economy, for example, it's government business that is all over the place. There's no private person who will not have something to do with the government. And therefore, unless we insist that, unless you show evidence of tax payment, or you have met your tax obligation to the government, one way or the other, they should not be able to give them any patronage.
Tell us very quickly now, you just mentioned tax avoidance and tax evasion. Yes. What's the difference?
Tax avoidance is where you try to reduce your liability. You declare that you are making income, but you will do all that you can to make sure
it's less.
And therefore, instead of paying maybe 100 million as tax, 100 million naira, you probably end up paying about 20 million naira. Well, the law is still very lenient on you because at least you have come up. So it's now left for the tax office to be able to do their work and get more information about you. But tax evasion, somebody who does not even want to pay tax at all.
And talking about that person that does not want to pay tax at all, because earlier you mentioned about persuasion, and I think that is very important here as against prosecution and penalties. But where is the place of government accountability in trying to process persuasion?
Well, it's a political will that we have to employ this time around, because tax are paid. The taxpayers will be happy if it's able to identify development projects that comes out of his tax that is paid. If somebody is paying tax and he cannot see any benefit, cannot get access to his house, he cannot have good roads, no electricity, everything, I mean, that won't encourage him to pay tax. But where that is done, then he's duty bound to pay it. And if he doesn't, there will be a penalty. But before we start applying the penalty, I think we need to persuade them that, look, you won't have access to government patronage. Either you want to enroll your child in school, or you want to get more contract or get more, because the economy of this country is government business.
All right. Don't you think we should have tax reforms where people who are self-employed are able to, the government puts in place mechanisms to be able to actually know what they get, how much income they get, and so they can tax them accurately?
It is that's pretty difficult. For example, what we are talking about, particularly, let us start from the collection of withholding tax. Withholding tax is to make somebody to be an agent of the government. I'll explain what a withholding tax is. Let us assume that the church and the mosque they don't want to pay tax, but they have contractors who supply diesel to them. They do a lot. They rent maybe houses for their pastors and the imams. Then before they pay the rents, before they pay the contractors, they have to retain what we call withholding tax. It's a 5%, which they have to remit to the government. So, in other words, they too are acting as agents, tax agents for the government. So there is nobody. So in that way, even small business people can still be dragged into it.
Very quickly, before we wrap it up, let me ask something that is perhaps on the lips of many Nigerians now who have been faithful with their tax payments for years and are yet to see results. Is there any lacuna at all that a Nigerian can explore when you feel disgruntled that you're not seeing the benefits of your tax? Does the tax constitution that provides penalties and prosecutions for those that don't pay also provide any benefits and anything you can do to hold the government accountable and say, I have to see this before I pay my next tax, perhaps?
Well, let me go political this time around, because in Lagos State, we have evidence of what the government do with tax received. We can now boast of lighted streets. We can now boast of good roads. We can now boast of, pedestrian crossing and so on. So people in Lagos State, I don't know about other states, but in Lagos State.
For other states, what can they do?
In the other states, they continue to persuade them. I mean, it's a matter of tax education and persuasion. But in Lagos, I think any taxpayer who evade tax should be,
okay, so
should be
it all boils down to persuasion at the end of the day. The government persuading the taxpayers to continue to pay,
yes,
and the taxpayers persuading the government to
provide
something.
Amenities.
Indeed, we'll leave it here for now.
Babatunde Gafar, I wish we had more time for this.
Thank you very much.
Tax practitioner and management consultant. Many thanks for speaking with us on the federal government's Tax Thursday declaration.